guys, so today I'm going to be doing a in-depth skull face paint, like realistic skull tutorial. I'm hoping that it's helpful for at least some of you. On my last video I asked if you guys would want to see that. I really wanted to do this type of video, but I wasn't sure if it would actually, if anybody actually wanted to see it. But I was really happy when you guys said you did. And this is the first time I've done something like this. All of my other skulls are pretty stylized and not super realistic. So I was a little bit experimental at some points. I was really trying hard not to be too back and forth or all over the place, but I have a feeling that some parts are a little bit all over the place, but I'm hoping you guys are able to follow and at least pick up a few tips or tricks and see how I work through a look with like my creative process. So yeah, I just hope you guys like this video. Let me know what you think in the comments, and let's just get right into the tutorial. Alright, so you guys said it would be really helpful if I filmed a realistic, in-depth skull tutorial, so that's what I'm going to attempt to do right now. So I've Googled human skull and human skull drawings for my reference photos. Sometimes it helps to look at drawings so you can kind of see how other people have used shading to create a realistic illusion. So the first thing that I'm doing is using a black eyeshadow to kind of map out some of the contour lines of the skull. So the shape of the eye socket kind of droops downwards around the end. So I'm kind of sketching that out around my eye. I'm bringing it up sort of right underneath my eyebrow, and then like the top of the eye socket is sort of the front of my eyebrow. By the way, I've already applied foundation on my face, which acts as a really good primer if you're doing any sort of face painting, especially if you're using eyeshadow instead of face paint, which is what I like to do a lot of the time. I also applied some primer to my eyes because without primer they crease. So I'm just doing the same thing on the other side and sketching out the outline of the eye socket. I'm going to look at some more photos to help me because I'm already struggling. Okay, so around the edge of the eye socket is kind of like a ridge around where the temple is. So I'm kind of going to draw the outline of that. So it kind of goes around the eye socket and then goes off past like the hairline. And all of this is going to be hollowed out when we add shading and stuff. Alright, so after it goes around the eye socket, it kind of tapers off up here. Yeah, okay, so that looks right. Alright, the next thing that I'm going to work on is the cheekbones. Alright, so it looks like the cheekbone sort of, it like curves around here and then goes back and almost connects to this line right here. So this is all like part of the same section of bone. And I like kind of making it go downwards a little bit out here. So starting at the hairline, it goes around where you would put like a contour line and curves down and then back up and then back down. And again, you just want to try to make them as even as possible, but if you don't, it's okay. Alright, so the mandible is kind of below the cheekbone, and there's kind of like an opening notch right below that, so I'm sort of drawing that little notch right there. And then it curves around the jawline.
You're all invited to go fucking mental on this motherfucking drop.
Looking at my reference photos again. So I see that I've made mine a little bit too thin, so I'm just bringing it out a little bit farther. And I also see that it kind of comes up a little bit higher over here, so I'm correcting that line as well. And I'm just going to be doing the same thing on the other side once I'm done messing with this side. If you're not sure if you're making it even, you can use your brush as kind of a reference and see where you made this line and just kind of tell yourself, all right, that's like an inch away from the end of my eye. And then go to this side and see if it's like an inch away or if it's like too close to your eye. You know, it's just a good little trick to use to see how even your work is.
Hell yeah.
Alright, so I think I'm going to make this come out even farther, because looking at a lot of the reference photos, it's coming out a lot closer to the mouth than I have been thinking this whole time, so I'm going to correct that really quickly. And I think that means the notch should be, okay, no, the notch stays a little bit further back below the cheekbone. So the notch is sort of in the right spot, but I'm going to move this up a little bit more. Alright, so now I'm going to sketch a little bit of the teeth, and the teeth are probably the most difficult part. I'm just sketching a line right underneath the curve of the cheekbone where it curves in right here, because the teeth kind of go, the cheekbone comes out over top of where the teeth are curving backwards into the skull. So they're kind of going to fade off into this dark area over here once we have it shaded in and stuff. And I'm also doing the bottom row of teeth, which actually does look to be a little bit shorter than the top row, so it looks like our proportions are going well so far. Alright, so for now I'm just gonna add a little shadow up here. This makes the skull look very concerned and worried, but if it's annoying then we'll deal with it later, but it is nice to not leave your forehead blank because that can look a little bit weird. Since this is a more realistic skull, I'm gonna go completely around my nostril, so like my entire nose is gonna be kind of black. So I'm just going around my nostril, and there's sort of like a piece of bone that comes up in the middle of the nose, and it's depicted differently in different skulls, so you can decide how high up you want to bring it, but you know, we'll deal with that later. I look so funny I look so funny. The arch is kind of here. I'm doing a sort of jagged line around the middle area of my nose, and then carrying it down to connect to around my nostrils. Nostrils is a weird word. It's kind of difficult for me to split this up into steps because normally I just kind of go all over the place and just tweak things along the way, so this is a new experience for me too, just so you know. Next thing that I'm going to do is take a makeup remover wipe and kind of erase the black shadow in the areas where I did it wrong, so pretty much just like the mandible, and yeah, that was pretty much it. So that's really the only area I kind of wanted to take some of that shadow away, and I'm also putting some foundation over top of that because like I said, I like using the foundation as kind of a base. So the next thing that I'm doing is going to be adding some general shading around the darker areas all over the place. So for this you want to use like a cool toned brown or a gray shadow, or I mean any color you want, but if you know, I'm using a cool toned brown / gray. This is a micro shadow in the shade Burly Wood from Makeup Store, and I'm going in with a Morphe E27 brush, and I'm just going to begin to shade some areas and just building up some shadow. So I'm just adding this to the empty space areas as well. Kind of like right here. I'm shading underneath the cheekbone on the part of the mandible that kind of goes underneath the cheekbone, so I'm adding that shading over here and by the edge of the teeth as well. At this point in time, I'm going to block out my lips with some foundation. I'm using CoverFX Cream Foundation for this. By the way, I'm sorry if you can hear the rain in the background. It's raining really hard, and every once in a while there's like raindrops that hit the window and stuff. So for the teeth, what I like to do is add the general shading and then go back in and carve out the actual teeth. So that's what I'm doing right now, and we're going to worry about the detail work later. I'm shading sort of along the, like the jawline because there's a significant dip into the skull underneath the bottom row of teeth. So I'm adding some shading over here. Also some shading underneath the nose. Not sure how necessary that is, but yeah, and I'm shading the area of the teeth that goes underneath the cheekbone also. This looks ridiculous right now, but it's gonna work out, trust me. So now I'm gonna go in with a bigger brush. This is a Morphe E46. I'm gonna add the shading underneath the mandible. A good lesson that one of my art teachers taught me once is that if you're drawing from life and you want it to be realistic, you should be looking at your reference more than you're looking at your actual work of art. And it's not like completely literally true, but it kind of has stuck with me through the years, and it's definitely true to an extent. If you're trying to make something realistic, you have to keep checking back at your reference and kind of seeing how your piece is going along with it, because if you don't, then you're going to end up drawing or painting or whatever from imagination, from what like you have the ideas in your head, and it's not going to end up as realistic as you want it to if that's like what you're going for. I looked like the Mary Poppins like boy that cleaned. That was Mary Poppins, right? The boy that cleaned like soot. Alright, so I'm going to go in with black eyeshadow. This is Kiss Cosmetics Soot eyeshadow. It's a really nice matte black, and I'm going to fill in my nose hole for now. Wow, that looks funny. Alright, I'm going to do the same thing in my eye sockets and just kind of color them in with black eyeshadow. It's gonna look worse before it looks better, okay? Don't worry about it. So I'm looking at my reference and my eyes, and I see how this one kind of arches upwards right under my brow, and this one kind of goes downwards like a sad face. So I'm gonna like arch that a little bit more like it is on this side. Every once in a while, you just want to check your reference and check how your work is coming along and make some tweaks. And that's how you just want to check, like with every step that you do, you just want to keep checking if you're trying to make it look realistic. Honestly, I'm procrastinating because I'm nervous to like really dive into this, but it has to happen. It has to happen. With the little slit looking thing in the middle of the nose, I'm taking some foundation and carrying it up a little bit higher. So I'm starting it right in between my nostrils and going up. You can go up all the way through. I think it depends like how much cartilage is attached to the skull, so you can have some creative freedom with this part. Alright, so I'm going to go back in with this smaller brush and the black shadow, and I'm shading the lines around my temple. So to do this, I'm starting at the line and going inwards because I want it to be darkest around the line and then kind of be a little bit lighter as it gets closer to my hairline to give more depth. In an actual skull, there would be like bone behind that, so it wouldn't be completely black because there would just be bone further in and it would have shadow over top of it.
We're back from the dead.
Now I'm taking a bigger brush and blending that black out a little bit more. Who knows, I might end up filling the rest of that in with black later, but for now, we're gonna let those chill. Alright, so next I'm going to color in the little ridge underneath the cheekbone with black. So it's kind of right underneath the contour line, just a little scoop. All right, using the slightly bigger brush, I'm going to blend underneath the cheekbone a little bit more with some black. I'm also going to color in this area right outside the teeth with black as well. Carrying the black out a little bit underneath the lower teeth line. Doing the same thing on the other side. This is the part we've all been dreading, the teeth. At first, I'm just going to take my little mini beauty sponge and kind of fix up this blending a little bit so I don't look dirty and smudged. Alright, so I'm going to use an angled brush for this, and I'm just carrying the line down. I think this is also where a lot of people have trouble being realistic, is the teeth. So I'm going to pull up my reference really quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, so there's about 7 on each side. So we're going to do this. Well, I know we have 32 teeth, so there's actually 8 on each side, but the last one is probably like barely visible, so for now we're just going to do 7. I'm putting some more shading back into these ones. I'm trying not to shade so much as to like erase the black lines that I put down, because those are going to be my guide later on. I'm also adding shading along the whole underneath of the bottom row. I'm going in with this blending brush that I've been using. I wiped it off, and as you can see, it's a blending brush, but it's like one of those ones that's sort of thin, and I'm going to add gray shading over top of each black line. Gonna use this brush again and some of the gray shadow to add some shading to these little angry looking lines that I put here. Alright, so reference check does not look like my references. I'm just gonna completely wipe these off. For these shadows, I think I'm just going to do it like very lightly and closer to my eyebrow. I'm also going to add a little ridge shadow underneath the eye socket. I'm going to add some more dark shading underneath this cheekbone because it's a little bit uneven. Alright, so I'm using a Morphe E19 brush. It's like a flat concealer brush, but it's pretty thin this way, so it's a good width that goes with like the width of the teeth. And I'm using my Cover FX Cream Foundation. And I'm going to be using this to carve out the teeth.
We're back from the dead. Back from the dead. Back from the dead.
So the shape of the tooth is like a tooth shape, towards the center, and then there's a little ridge, and then it's like a thin highlight where the root of the tooth is. So I'm kind of adding a little bit more shading up towards the roots to make it a little bit thinner, but I'm keeping the bottoms like thick, if that makes sense. So now I'm going to go in and define the tooth from like the roots, and for this I'm using a little pencil brush. I'm just kind of drawing like the top of the tooth and then blending it upwards a little bit. Yeah, I'm just basically doing the same thing on the bottom. Alright, so it looks like above the nose ridge there's like a little line. So I don't know why. I'm gonna add that little shadow right above the nose ridge. I'm gonna add some black below my chin. I'm gonna go into some more foundation and pat around this shadow a little bit more. Just sort of lightening it up a bit along with the tooth roots over here. It looks like the little notch thing on the mandible sort of carries down a little indent. So I'm gonna put that in. So at this point I'm gonna go in with some gray and start shading around my hairline because my forehead is looking pretty empty. So it looks like there's a ridge right above this little line here, so I'm gonna shade that with some black. I'm also gonna add a little shadow right there. I'm also gonna add a little ridge underneath this part of my eye socket. Alright, I'm gonna add a little bit of foundation right underneath the cheekbone, between the cheekbone and the teeth right there, but I'm gonna keep like the shadow that comes in, I'm gonna keep a little bit of it. I'm just adding a little bit of highlight right there. Alright, so I was kind of getting all over the place and I wasn't sure like what really to do next, and I want this tutorial to be as coherent as possible, so I decided to finish this side of my face and do the, like, explain what I'm doing to finish it on this side of my face. Alright, so the first thing that I'm going to do is use a Morphe E15 brush and NYX SFX cream color in white and just add in some of the highlights on the high points of the bones. Now I'm going back in with some black eyeshadow and really defining these little ridges that I kind of sketched in earlier. Alright, so it took me a few tries to get the line work around the cheekbone the way that I want it to look, so I'm going to kind of try to replicate how I did it on this side. Sort of just bringing it down towards my teeth and then adding another little shadow right there and then one closer to my nose. And kind of making it so the cheekbone goes completely at a slant this way. So for the rest of the tutorial, I'm really going to be adding in the very dark darks and the very light lights. So for this part, you want to make sure you have separate brushes for like white and black, because if you don't, then it'll just get all mixed together into gray. So you want to make sure you have designated brushes for different purposes. Alright, so other places where I'm adding little ridges, right here I'm going to add one because I put one on this side.
Hell yeah.
So now I'm just using Suva Beauty's Bank Matte White Hydra Cream Base, which is a water activated cream substance, and for this you can also use face paint, but I really prefer this product. And I'm adding the highlights to the ridges around my eye socket. So basically I'm adding a highlight to the high point of every ridge around the bones. I'm using a Sigma E30 brush as the brush that I'm using to kind of blend out the white when I need to. So I'm adding a highlight along the jawbone as well, and underneath the shadow in the jawbone, and sort of blending it out to make it less harsh. So for highlighting the teeth, I'm sort of outlining the shape of the tooth with the white, and then going in with, where's my shader brush? My shader brush, and just kind of diffusing it around the tooth. Right, that makes sense, that makes sense. Adding the curved highlight to the teeth really helps give it more of a shape, and I'm doing the same thing on the bottom row of teeth as well. Alright, now I'm going to be adding the highlights to the extended roots of the teeth. So I'm doing it pretty light-handedly, and I'm going to be blending it out to diffuse it a little bit. For this tooth right here, I'm carrying the highlight up to go around my nostril. Okay, so I'm also adding a highlight on the other side of the shadow that defines the tooth. So I highlighted the tooth, and then there's the shadow, and then on top of that I'm adding a little highlight there too. On top of this little triangle shadow next to my nose, I'm adding a highlight along the under eye, extending out to my cheekbone. So this tooth root right here, I'm adding a highlight to it, and I'm extending it along the cheekbone. Alright, so I'm also going to change the shape of my nose. I'm going to kind of add a little shape to the bottom of the white line in the middle to kind of make it look like it's branching out into my nose. Okay, so now I'm going to be adding the super dark shadows to really define them, and for this I'm using Suva Beauty's matte Hydra liner, the black one. It's called Grease, but it's actually water activated and not greasy at all. And to do this, I'm using a Morphe E37 brush. First, I'm defining underneath the cheekbone. I'm also kind of outlining the edge of my teeth over here and the edge of the jawbone. And then this negative space area right here is kind of outlined with the liner, and I'm sort of diffusing the black into that. Alright, I'm basically doing the same thing with my temple shape right over here. I'm just outlining it in black, and then I'm going to diffuse it into the negative space. I'm also coloring in the dip in the mandible over here with black, and extending that shade a little bit down. And now I'm going to be adding a tiny bit of black on the insides of the smaller ridge shadows on my face. Back from the dead. And I'm outlining my eye socket as well. Now I'm going to be adding the detail shadows to my teeth, and I'm going to be outlining them with the black first. So I'm just carefully going back in and outlining them. Hell yeah. And I'm doing the same thing on the bottom. Alright, so the shadow in this space between the jawbone and the cheekbone, I'm just extending it a little bit right underneath my lower teeth line. Adding a little shadow right there. And I'm also adding a little bit of deeper shading in the extensions of the upper teeth. So pretty much in between where I've already put the highlight. Alright, I also forgot that I added a little ridge on the side of my nose, so I'm just going to add that in. And now I'm going to go in with the white and highlight it.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're all invited to go fucking mental on this motherfucking drop.
I'm also going to add mascara and gel liner to my eyes. It looks like creepily realistic if you kind of like blur your vision a little bit. So this is the finished result. When I'm like talking and my eyes are open, it looks a little bit weird, but if I stay still and close my eyes, it looks really cool. I really hope at least some of you were able to learn a little something from this video. I'm really proud of how it came out, but I'm nervous about, first of all, the length, and second of all, the cohesiveness of the video, because a few points I would like try something and then kind of take it away and add it back. I was a little bit all over the place, which I really did not want to do in this video. But this is the first time I've done like a realistic skull. So it was a little bit of experimentation for me, but I hope that you were able to follow along a little bit, learn some things, and I just hope that I helped you guys, because on my other skull video, you guys said that you would really like to see a tutorial like this, so I hope that it met your expectations, and yeah, I love you guys. Subscribe if you haven't already, like the video, leave me a comment, and I will see you in my next tutorial.